Greetings, boys and babes. It's the Magic Hour, a place where we navigate through life's peaks and valleys with all the vulnerability and shamelessness we can muster. With the help of world-class guests from all walks of life, we uncover new truths and valuable tools for manifesting our highest potential. I'm your host, Mercedes Terrell, along with my partner in shine, Jade Bryce.
Hey, you guys. Today we're going to be diving into the world of women's hormones. And fellas, before you shut this off, let me just say that any man who listens to this show will have one up on all other men because this is how you become woke. We promise this episode will be just as enlightening for you fellas as it will for you ladies. And this is a big day for us because we're interviewing one of Mercedes' dream guests.
Yes, I'm so excited to be checking this one off my dream guest list. This woman we're talking to today is one of the reasons I'm now living in more harmony with my body. And I'd even credit her work for helping me get my relationship with my husband to a better place because of his openness to explore the wisdom she's bringing to the world.
Yeah. Was it easy to get Chris on board? Because I know most men I've dated previous to my current boyfriend would not have been open to learning more about the female body and especially our hormonal cycles.
Yeah. Actually, no, it wasn't. At first, he was really resistant, but luckily he was open to watching today's guest TED Talk and absorbing some other information around the subject regards to why it's so critical for men to be in the know when it comes to women's hormones, considering all men's lives would be improved dramatically by knowing this stuff, since all men have relationships with women, whether it be with their mothers or sisters, daughters, friends, or obviously their romantic partners. And if they're single, this is the info that's going to help them get and keep a mate.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that my boyfriend was hooked after her first email. It is critical. I can't wait to talk to our guests about all this. And I have so many questions. And of course, my boyfriend gave me some of his own questions to ask as well. So let's get her on.
Let's do it. Please welcome a functional nutritionalist and women's hormone expert who has spent the last 15 years studying, researching, personally applying, and globally teaching how to stop hormonal chaos and get into hormonal flow. She built her virtual online health center, FLO Living, to help women solve their hormonal symptoms from anywhere in the world. She published a book called Woman Code, which has been in the top 50 best-selling women's health books of all time since it was published. Along with her newest book, In the Flow, she also created a truly life-changing app called My Flow that's not just helping women everywhere track and balance their menstrual cycles, but is also inviting the men in our lives to the party by allowing them to better understand and support us through the syncing tools it provides. A graduate of Johns Hopkins University and the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, she's contributed widely in the world of public health media, including her web series on Lifetime, as well as her contributions to CBS, Fox, Shape, Women's Health, Mind Body Green, and the Huffington Post, and as the writer of Yahoo Health's Hormone Whisperer column. And you may have seen her on Dr. Oz or on her very impactful TED Talk, where she spoke on the intersection of hormones, neurochemistry, feminine energy, entrepreneurship, and success. These are just a few of this Wonder Woman's credentials. Did I mention she's also a mom? I don't know how she manages it all, but she's truly changing the landscape of what it means to be a woman, empowering both women and men everywhere to view our intricate hormonal bodies as the miracles they are, reducing the stigma around menstruation and the menstrual cycle, and all that it comes with, and driving us toward a more harmonious tomorrow. I couldn't be more pleased to welcome Alisa Vitti to the Magic Hour. Damn, that intro is 2 pages long. Okay. Greetings, boys and babes. It's the Magic Hour, a place where we navigate through life's peaks and valleys with all the vulnerability and shamelessness we can muster. With the help of world-class guests from all walks of life, we uncover new truths and valuable tools for manifesting our highest potential. I'm your host, Mercedes Terrell, along with my partner in shine, Jade Bryce.
Hey, you guys. Today we're going to be diving into the world of women's hormones. And fellas, before you shut this off, let me just say that any man who listens to this show will have one up on all other men because this is how you become woke. Yes. We promise this episode will be just as enlightening for you fellas as it will for you ladies. And this is a big day for us because we're interviewing one of Mercedes' dream guests.
Yes, I'm so excited to be checking this one off my dream guest list. The woman we're talking to today is one of the reasons I'm now living in more harmony with my body. And I'd even credit her work for helping me get my relationship with my husband to a better place because of his openness to explore the wisdom she's bringing to the world.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Was it easy to get Chris on board? Because I know most men I've dated previous to my current boyfriend would not have been open to learning more about the female body and especially our hormonal cycles.
I feel you. Actually, no, at first he was really resistant, but luckily he was open to watching today's guest's TED Talk and absorbing some other info in regards to why it's so critical for men to be in the know when it comes to women's hormones, considering all men's lives would be improved dramatically by knowing this stuff, since all men have relationships with women, whether it be with their mothers or sisters, daughters, friends, or obviously romantic partners. And if they're single, this is the info that's going to help them get and keep a mate.
Yeah. And, my boyfriend was hooked after her first email. So she's really got a lot of beneficial information in all of your relationships, like Mercedes was saying. It really is critical. And I can't wait to talk to our guests about all of it. I have so many questions. And of course, my boyfriend gave me some of his as well. So let's get her on.
Let's do it. Please welcome a functional nutritionalist and women's hormone expert who has spent the last 15 years studying, researching, personally applying, and globally teaching how to stop hormonal chaos and get into hormonal flow. She's built her virtual online health center, FLO Living, to help women solve their hormonal symptoms from anywhere in the world. She published a book called Woman Code, which has been in the top 50 best-selling women's health books of all time since it was published. Along with her newest book, In the Flow, she also created a truly life-changing app called My Flow that's not just helping women everywhere track and balance their menstrual cycles, but is also inviting the men in our lives to the party by allowing them to better understand and support us through the syncing tools it provides. A graduate of Johns Hopkins University and the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, she's contributed widely in the world of public health media, including her web series on Lifetime, as well as her contributions to CBS, Fox, Shape, Women's Health, Mind Body Green, and the Huffington Post, and as the writer of Yahoo Health's Hormone Whisperer column. And you might have seen her on Dr. Oz or on her very impactful TED Talk, as we mentioned, where she spoke on the intersection of hormones, neurochemistry, feminine energy, entrepreneurship, and success. These are just a few of this Wonder Woman's credentials. Did I mention she's also a mom? I don't know how she manages it all, but she's truly changing the landscape of what it means to be a woman, empowering both women and men everywhere to view our intricate hormonal bodies as the miracles they are, reducing the stigma around menstruation and the menstrual cycle and all that it comes with, and driving us all toward a more harmonious tomorrow. I couldn't be more pleased to welcome Alisa Vitti to the Magic Hour.
How are you?
Hi.
Sorry about the delay this morning. It was my daughter's graduation from
kindergarten.
That's what all morning I've had like parades of cars honking their horns and the teachers. I live right next to a preschool and a middle school.
Yeah. It ran a little longer, and then anyway, she was like not wanting me to come in and do this.
Oh, no problem.
So it's good to meet you both.
You too. Good to see you.
I love your background, Mercedes.
Oh, thank you.
I know hers is so good. I love your brick and plant.
Oh yes. Well, we are doing our best over here.
I like how all three of us are curly haired today. This is
well, I don't do it any other way. Don't you feel like a different person when you straighten out your curls?
Yeah,
like, I do. Not yourself.
No, because I've straightened it. I've worn it straight longer than I've worn it curly.
Most of our jobs wouldn't let us wear it curly for some reason. Because
we should do to
them it's like unkept.
I'm wearing this shirt because of our show today. World Domination.
I need that shirt. I need that shirt. I will tell you a funny story. I had my hair blown out. I came back from like a salon in Soho, and somebody had blown out my hair. And this is maybe, I don't know, 10 years ago. And my boyfriend at the time, I told him to meet me somewhere, like on an outdoor plaza
Uh-huh.
He walked by me twice.
Oh my gosh.
Did not recognize me. And I was I really don't look the same without some curl in my hair. Just strange.
Yeah, it's important. I know it's like a silly thing or whatever, but it really does. It's like eyebrows, it just frames the face.
So I have until 2, given our late start, if that is helpful to you ladies.
2, yeah, what time are you
time
on?
zone are you in?
I'm sorry, I'm East Coast time.
Okay.
So half an hour later. It's just about to turn 1 o'clock here.
Okay, so we have a lot to cover. So
yeah, so let's jump in. I'm going to read your bio, which is fairly extensive, but let's do it, and then we'll just
you can just cherry pick what you like from it.
Okay, or we can just skip it. I mean, we can read it off screen or however you want to do it. I'll read
maybe
it.
Start it empowering at the end.
Okay.
That way we just get it clean. Yeah.
Okay. Where is that in my little? Here we go. Okay, cool. And then we will just try to, go through these as quickly as possible.
Yeah, we'll do a speed round. Yeah.
Do we have 30 minutes or do we have an hour?
We have as much time as you give us. So yes.
Awesome. Okay, great. Then
so we want to just we'll get it so that we can wrap right when you need to.
Yeah.
Okay. So we are good to go on my end. We're already recording. Okay. Empowering both women and men everywhere to view our intricate hormonal bodies as the miracles they are, reducing the stigma around menstruation and the menstrual cycle and all that it comes with, and driving us toward a more harmonious tomorrow. I couldn't be more pleased to welcome Alisa Vitti to the Magic Hour.
Yay!
Be here.
So glad to have you here. I'm a huge fan. We talked all about it before you got on. You have a really interesting story of how you came to the work you're doing now. So could you maybe explore that journey with us?
Yeah, I mean, I think long and short of it is that I had this experience of hormonal chaos at a young age and had it totally, interrupt everything about my life, not just my health, but also my life. And so there was this early on connection in my mind between my hormones and what I could do with my time and my life. And for those of you who are listening who have hormonal imbalances or endometriosis or PCOS or perimenopause or whatever you're dealing with, infertility, it's not just a factor of the time that you put into trying to deal with your symptoms or get well. It's also the decrease in energy and life force vitality that you have because your system is not functioning optimally. And so without realizing it, I guess I embarked on a journey at a young age of female specific biohacking, which I'm pretty passionate about, sharing with women because we've all been duped into biohacking as if we're tiny men, and it's making us so sick and symptomatic. But yes, I mean, I struggled with a condition called polycystic ovarian syndrome, although I was not diagnosed for 7 long, highly symptomatic years, and that looked like only 5 menstrual cycles from the age of 12 to 22. 2 of which were chemically induced with synthetic progesterone. Wow. And it looked like massive weight gain. On my 5'6" frame, I was tipping the scales at 210. And it looked like a lot of cystic acne. I mean, so much cystic acne on my face, chest, and back that I would have to take so much time every day to just cover that up to feel like I could walk outside and not feel conspicuous and ashamed of how I looked. And then it also manifested as insomnia and, depression with a little bit of anxiety as well. So it was a very overwhelming disorder. And I felt very isolated and alone because it didn't seem like anybody else that I knew was suffering with that. Even though the statistics are 1 in 10 women have PCOS, 1 in 10 have endometriosis, 1 in 10 have fibroids. I mean, there's the vast majority of women, when you add the aggregate of all of these 1 in 10s, it turns out about half of all women are struggling with hormonal imbalances. But my doctors had no idea what was wrong with me, and they kept dismissing my concerns about how I was feeling and saying it was all in my head and that I was just having difficult teenage years and I should just go on the pill and kind of be quiet. And that's also a common experience for so many women, right? Where you are told to ignore your pain, or let's look at Lena Dunham, right? The poor, she is I would say a modern martyr of, the failings of our healthcare system for women, right? That should have been caught. Her endo should have been caught so much earlier, and so much support been given to her so that she did not have to end up having to have a hysterectomy at such a young age, right? That should not be the quote unquote final solution and best option. I mean, just think about it this way too. If we compare the lack of research and solutions for women with reproductive health issues compared to men's, physiology, right? And this area of their health, if men had an erection dysfunction or prostate dysfunction, or something that was, bothering their testicular performance, they would not just say, well, there's nothing we can do, we should just remove them.
Right. Yeah.
It's the last thing they would literally opt for.
It would not even be a thought. It would just not even be a thought. Instead, you have quite the opposite. I mean, just think about, I think it was in the 90s. Remember when Bob Dole would get on TV and talk about his ED? Do you remember that?
No.
It was groundbreaking.
But that's amazing.
PSA, like little commercial, public service announcements. Bob Dole, who was once a presidential candidate, would get on TV and talk about his erectile dysfunction and how there's medication that, and you shouldn't be ashamed and you should talk to your doctor. This is a non-life-threatening situation. And compared to what I was facing in my teens and 20s with all of these systemic issues, from metabolic to mental health to physical appearance to reproductive health, so many systems, right? Where's the research? Where's the funding? Instead, they put, I don't even know how much money, but I'm certain it was into the multiple millions, if not $1 billion of research went in to fund the development of medications like Viagra, right? In fact, nitric oxide in 1992 was deemed the molecule of the year, just to show how nerdy I am. Oh my God. And that is the basis of Viagra. Where is the equivalent for women? And we see that when there isn't an equivalent, what is happening to us? It's my experience of that decade of my young life, my youth, where it should be all, lovely, pubescent, normal stuff. It was co-opted by something that could have been avoided with proper information and support. And you can't get that time back. And for anybody who's struggling with chronic health issues or hormonal issues, it steals your time. Yeah. And your time is your precious gift. So I vowed pretty early on that if I could figure out how to get well, that I would build a platform, a place for women to come and get that kind of information, education, support, products, programs, tools, to make this easy. Because the fact that we don't have that in our modern recorded history, a place for women to go and just get that hormonal support that they need, is very telling. And I don't think it's acceptable at this point. It's time, time's up, so to speak, on women not having the healthcare that they need. And, to wrap up the story of my journey, I was at Johns Hopkins University planning to become an OBGYN, and I was just still struggling so much. And so I would do research on Friday nights and Saturday nights because, I was not going out on dates given my situation. And so I was researching in the library and found an article on Stein-Leventhal disease, and all the light bulbs went off of recognition that this is in fact the disorder that I'm struggling with. was able to bring that to my gynecologist the very next morning, and she confirmed my diagnosis, which is a very empowering experience, right? Where you figure something out yourself and the doctor confirms for you. And then she said, we just don't have any options for you. We can just medicate you along the way. You're going to struggle with infertility and heart disease and obesity and diabetes and potential cancer. And, we'll just give you as much medication as we can to help you, but there's no cure. And I just remember feeling like very clear message from the cells of my body saying, there was a different path for me that I needed to take. So I graciously told her that. I said, no, I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to try something else. She said, what are you going to try? I said, I don't know yet, but I will get to the bottom of this. And one of the things I always had was great faith in my ability to figure things out. And so that served me really well. And then I would say within 2 years of that conversation, I had restored my cycle, my ovulation, dropped 60 pounds, cleared my skin, recovered my mood, and got my life back, and have been on fire ever since to help any woman who's going through this, because it just should not be that decade after decade, generation after generation, women still experience their hormones as a plague upon their life, when they really are supposed to be this extraordinary advantage, because nature literally imbued you with the best of everything, the best brain, the best immune system, the best reproductive system, the best metabolism, the best absolutely everything, because you are encoded to 3D print tiny human beings, whether or not you choose to do that, because you're the gender that can do it, you have to have all the best ofs in order to be able to do that. And we don't experience ourselves that way, and we should, because that's our biological wiring.
Beautiful.
Say, if one of our listeners or one of us found that our hormones are out of whack or felt some of these symptoms, what would be our first move?
I think the best thing to do is to evaluate your cycle. In 2015 or 16, the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecologists decreed that your cycle as a whole is to be considered your fifth vital sign. And just to be clear, the other 4 vital signs they take when you go to the emergency room, like your temperature, your blood pressure, right? You want to take very seriously you want to start tracking your cycle, any symptoms you're having. For example, do you have a lot of symptoms during ovulation? Do you have a lot of PMS? What is the color, consistency, and texture of your bleed? How long is it? How regular is it? Do you produce visible cervical fluid? What is going on? You have to get in there, so to speak, and start observing your cycle in real time. It is every month valuable biofeedback about what is going on with your hormone ratios. In fact, back in 2013, I went on Dr. Oz and made TV history, believe it or not, being the first woman or person to ever talk about menstrual color as it relates to hormones and to simulate these menstrual fluids on national television. And it was groundbreaking, because to have you be able to visualize these 4 or 5 different color combinations that your period can be is very empowering. For example, if you have heavy, dark, clotty bleeding every month, and you're struggling with a little excess weight, and you have some breakouts, and you feel moody, you could be struggling with excess estrogen, right? If you have brownish prune juice colored like fluid that starts at the beginning of your bleed or at the end of your bleed, you could have a progesterone insufficiency. And these are things that change. It's not that you would have this, you don't necessarily have to have the same kind of bleed month over month. You often do until these hormones are resolved, but it can change not just very rapidly month to month, but definitely over the course of your entire reproductive lifespan. It's important to understand and evaluate. So that's the first thing. I built a very well-loved period tracking app, because when people ask me after Woman Code came out, people started asking me to build an app. And I said, well, I just don't want to make an app that just says, hey, your period's coming, because most of us know when that's about to happen. I felt like that was a little too.
It's almost like when I get the alert that my period starts in 2 days, it's almost like a downer. Like, what? Like, why did I have to get this message?
Exactly. And it's not very empowering. And I even saw some that had been developed by men, no question, that had around ovulation, like the image for ovulation to represent ovulation was like a tube of lipstick or a high heel, because that's when you were sexually more open to, I guess, men. I mean, it's a little, not a little, there's a lot of still not good gender bias that exists. So I built an app called MyFLO, myflowtracker.com, and it helps you track not just your symptoms, but helps to teach you in micro doses as it's happening. Like, let's say you get a breakout day 14, right? You're ovulating. This is when your skin is supposed to be magically the most beautiful. Your face actually changes slightly in symmetry. You have more collagen production. I mean, this is supposed to be the good skin week, right? But you're having chin breakouts. You're going to click that as a symptom, and then it's going to tell you why that's happening to you, because none of this should be mysterious. So that's the first thing, is start tracking and start getting the education that you need to really understand what's going on. What you're going to find is that you're having an imbalance of estrogen and progesterone. And then what you want to do is start taking steps to help your body break down estrogen, make more progesterone if needed, and start to balance your endocrine system, and also take care of your infradian rhythm as a whole, which I know we're going to dive into. That's something from my new book, but it's so important to start doing that cleanup work. And the FLO protocol that's described in Woman Code, and that's part of the well-loved monthly FLO program, really helps take you through what do you do from start to finish. I don't want any woman to feel like they have to figure this out on their own like I did. I've laid out all the steps. All you have to do is log in and follow them.
Yeah, we're already following. We have the apps. We do all the tracking. I track all my friends because they won't track themselves. So
that's a good friend. You are a good friend.
I mean, they're my science experiment.
She had a little journal for me before I had one for myself. So
I love it. That is like what I would
track
call
my husband too.
Good ovary karma.
Every now and then, like I would tell her how I was feeling about something, like, oh, I'm feeling really bloated today, or like, oh, I'm experiencing this with my boyfriend, and she would be like, her first question, what day of the month are you on? Like, it was always, and then I realized she was tracking me.
I love that. No,
it gave us so many answers. It's given us so many answers, and I learned it from you. So Alisa, this is important work you're doing. Through your story, it's obvious you're in your calling, and you whatever way you want to look at it, the universe brought you, your own struggles and laid it out right in front of you, plain as day. I did want to, before we jump into, first of all, how to understand when something might be off, what are the symptoms and signals to look for there, and then how to go about healing ourselves. I wanted to kind of back us up for a moment just to get anyone listening on board, which, by the way, we have about a 50-50 male-female audience for this show.
Excellent.
And that's something super important. We talked about a little bit before you got on, is getting men on board and getting our life partners on board with this whole journey, because they have women in their life, no matter what. If you're a man, you have several different women in your life, whether it's your sister, mother, lover. And the first thing I want to cover there is, why is menstruation and the female reproductive cycle, even childbirth, all these things, why are they still taboo? They're like the last taboo topic, it feels like. What is the resistance we've got going on there?
I think it's getting so much better. Listen, about 5 years ago, I started seeing something that was historic, which was and it started with a few really beautiful, smart, genius, intelligent, and brave millennials who were posting pictures of their bleeding on Instagram. Like, oh, look, here's my bloody spot on my pants or my bed, or here's my period cup full of my menstrual fluid, or I'm going to run the London Marathon with no pad on because that's going to be a big problem, obviously. And that sparked a conversation in wellness media outlets like Well and Good and Mind Body Green, and even other larger publications that really started to ask that same question of, it's time to normalize menstruation. And it was for the first time in recorded human history. And my calling is science. One of my passions is his history. And so really looking back at all of from the Renaissance to the feminist first wave movement, that nothing like this had happened before, where it was just so much penetration into the mass media because of the internet. And it's so exciting, and it has only expanded and improved and normalized the conversation more and more. Has it completed its work? Are we there yet with this being normal? No. And it goes back to what you had just said about how important it is to loop in men as allies. So I think that, this is something in the medical community is when you're a resident, right? When you're learning how to become, the head surgeon of your area, your department, the rule of thumb is you learn one and you teach one, right? So you learn a procedure and then you teach a procedure, because if you do that, you're continuing the knowledge bank and expanding the circle. We need to do the same thing as women. First, we need to learn, right? We need to learn about how our biology works. We need to let go of this toxic mythology that we've all been infected by, that says that this is a curse, that your hormones are mysterious, unknowable, unpredictable, undefinable, on their impact on your body, that you are just this creature of the mysterium, right?
A witch.
This is
burn her at the stake.
Yeah, utter BS and nonsense when you look at the biology. And that's why I'm so excited about my new book, In the Flow, because I lay this out so clearly for you. There should be zero questions left about how your body works after you read this book. And then once you are totally familiar and intimate with your function, then you teach, right? So that looks like, for example, my husband, since our first date, we have been talking about me. We've obviously been talking about hormones and women and the gender bias that is very unconscious that we have in our society, the cultural narrative that is toxic. And so I'm educating him on a women's history, feminist theory, and hormones, so that he can have some education about it, because he has not had any exposure. And I never let anything slide, right? For example, here's a great example. My father the other day, who I love, who has contributed greatly to my confidence and self-esteem, and has been like a feminist without realizing it all his life, because of his relationship with his mother, who was just an extraordinary woman. He said, we were having some conversation. He said, men are really simple. They need like food and they need whatever, right? And he was saying these like the things you always hear about what men need. 3 simple things, right? Sleep and food and some affection. Okay. And I said to my dad, because it just was coming right out of my body, I said, where is the equivalent conversation for women that says, oh, women are so simple, they just need these 3 things? And he said, well, because they're not. And I said, let's pause right here and let me tell you why that's not true, and why that is a representation of some unaddressed gender bias that you're holding without even wanting to. And I gave him a little education about the 3 simple things women need in a relationship. From my point of view, we need to be witnessed in all that we're doing, right? I want my husband to notice, gosh, I'm so impressed with all the school research you're doing. Thank you for doing it. I just want him to notice and verbalize that.
Yeah, like credit, a little bit of credit.
A little bit of appreciation, right? And in the world of masculine and feminine relationship dynamics, they would call that the divine masculine, witnessing the divine feminine in her dance of all her multifaceted talents, right? So we want the man to just notice and say, I see you, right? Yeah. Which a lot of men forget to do. They notice, they see, but they don't say it. And then the woman,
Chris, are you listening?
The woman feels unappreciated. Oh yes, by the way, men, I am literally now giving you several keys to the kingdom of your happiness if you're in a relationship.
Yeah, seriously.
Please take copious notes.
Copious.
So number 1 is watch what she's doing, register it in your brain and say, wow, I'm seeing this. Even if you don't have an opinion about it, just say, wow, look at what you're doing. You do so many things. I really appreciate and acknowledge that about you. And then we need help, right? Offer your help on anything that we're doing. Like, oh, can I help with the dishes? Can I help take out just help, just volunteer your support with physical help. And then 3, physical affection in the way that we want to receive it. Very simple. Women in relationships want very simple things, equivalent, different, but in the equivalency of the simple things that men want. Why is that not the cultural norm? Why is that not part of our cultural narrative to even have that assumption? Well, it's because of all this gender bias, and it comes from this outcropping of the legacy of this toxic mythology we have around menstruation and reproduction and birth and postpartum. For example, this thing about postpartum really, really gets me fired up. There's this cultural conversation that says, oh, gee, my wife, if you're in a heterosexual relationship, this is more common. My wife is not the same person that she was before she gave birth and got pregnant. And I wish she was. When is that going to come back? And here's something that was just so important that came out research. And I do not remember the researcher's name, but you can Google her. She has a very important TED Talk. I wrote about her in the new book, so she's in the book. But she coined a brand new term. And in her research, doing brain scans on postpartum women, they discovered that the structural changes to the female brain, pregnancy and postpartum, are an order of magnitude way greater than the massive structural changes that happen in puberty. Wow. So first thing is, 1, you are definitely not the same person. And you will never be the same again because those structural changes are permanent. Second, we have a culturally normalized in our cultural narrative, right, that we have to give a wide berth for teenagers as they go through this massive brain shift until they emerge and become the new self, the new young adult self. But we give 0 slack to new moms because we don't look at the science and we've ignored it. And so until we bring the science forward and actually have a working relationship with facts and not toxic mythology, we will never have a society that is egalitarian. We will have a society that perpetuates a gender imbalance that is not healthy for anyone.
Wow. Yeah. There's hormones themselves is just like one of those words people think, oh yeah, I know what those things are, but the depth of, that's all we are. We're these chemicals that make up our personalities and responses. And I think anyone, man or woman, is going to be their life will be greatly improved by getting any kind of extended knowledge or wisdom in this area. And like you said, absolutely, the hero's journey you've been on in your own life of testing it on yourself, applying it to yourself, and learning the depths of how those chemicals in your body work and how to, change them with your own tools and willpower. And then be able to teach that to the world, which you're doing so beautifully here. And thank you for bringing men along with us, because I think that's the critical piece of this.
Yeah, I grew up without sisters. I have 2 brothers. I have a father. I have great relationships with the men in my life, and that's why I actually built the partner sync feature in the app. Because when I teach, often when there are men in the audience, you can see that they have been hungering for this, because all they want is to have the information that they have about themselves. Men have been taught from a young age about how their hormonal patterns work and how to optimize their lives around it. For example, every man knows he wakes up with the largest concentration of blood serum testosterone, right? So he's going to organize certain activities, if he can, to take advantage of that testosterone. Women their pattern is circadian, right? It's a rinse and repeat every 24 hours. So they know how to organize their day, their life, their time. Every time management program, every success guru, every power morning routine, everything like that you've heard, workout, time of day, when to eat, all of that is oriented around male biology.
Yeah.
And the circadian rhythm. And men, without even being consciously aware of this, because of the cultural narrative that they've been fed about their bodies and their biology, they know to take advantage of these things. And they, again, I think it's subconscious, wish that there was a similar recipe for success with the women that they love so that they could have an easier time interacting with them. Like, gee, I wish I knew it's because if we don't have an organized pattern to look at, everything looks like chaos, right? So if a man is saying, gee, I notice sometimes my wife is tired, sometimes my wife is moody, sometimes she's really interested in sex, sometimes she's not. Is it me? A lot of men have reported to me that they feel insecure in relationship to women because they don't understand these pattern changes.
Yes.
And they love when I give them it's a grid, it's a 4x4 grid. Here's the 4 hormonal shifts. Here's what you need to know about spending time together, sex and foreplay, and socializing, right? And domestic stuff.
Yeah.
And here you go. Now you have here's a map to interacting with the female person in your life in a way that's going to optimize the interaction. Right?
It's so simple that it's like, how has this not been laid out before? And that's why I just love your work. And I know it's so groundbreaking, and it is changing. It's changing the world as we know it, as we speak, literally. I love that we can also offer you a platform here.
5 love languages got super trendy, and like the archetypes got super trendy. So hopefully
hopefully everyone jumps on board sooner rather than later. So I do want to go back to what we're speaking about and to kind of cover the basics before we get into determining whether we have hormonal imbalances and how to heal those. First, let's cover the basics for women in their childbearing years, because that's largely what we're speaking to here, regarding what the phases you're talking about, the map you're talking about, what the hormonal cycle consists of, and maybe you can also break down your infradian rhythm as well.
So let me give a little backstory, and I'm going to just hold up a picture of my new book, baby. So I want to give a little backstory on this new book. Okay. So I had written Woman Code, and it's been a bestseller ever since it was published in 2013. And I thought, great, I built the platform, I've written a guide now, and now because of all the free bleeding millennials, there's more media coverage to talk about menstrual health. Perfect. Now we have an equation, more content, more access should equal more healthy women.
Yes.
But instead, what I've been tracking is that there's been a worsening of hormonal issues for women. And like I said, 47% of women are struggling with hormonal issues.
Wow. And
in their reproductive years. It's a huge number when you compare it to the male cohort, which is something like under 10%.
Wow.
So why is that? I started asking myself, why am I not seeing an improvement if we have historically now moved into a place where women can access all this content online? There are no barriers to information. What is going on? And what I found was a little bit disturbing, but also really exciting. Okay. The first thing that I found was that women are being left out of medical, fitness, and nutrition research entirely. Okay. Which means that every time you read an article that says intermittent fasting confers life-extending health benefits, that actually has not been researched on women in their reproductive years. And the research that I dug up, the little bit of research I dug up, which I put in this book, actually shows that it's the opposite. For women in their reproductive years, intermittent fasting does the exact opposite. Instead of improving insulin sensitivity, it worsens it.
No way.
Instead of improving your brain performance, it increases brain fog. There's a whole list. And by the way, to boot, it shrinks your ovaries, which is not what you want to be doing in your reproductive years. So everything that you read about wellness, about how to set up your day, about, what the best workout is. We'll talk about high intensity interval training too in a minute. All of these things are being researched on men. So that's the first thing. The second thing that I uncovered was that we have a second biological clock that no one knows about. So we all have heard about the circadian rhythm. Yes, it's now become famous in biohacking circles. And in fact, 2 years ago, 2 male scientists were awarded the Nobel Prize because they discovered the genes that control the circadian rhythm. Wonderful discovery. And the science of biological rhythms is a new one within the biological umbrella. It's a vertical called chronobiology. And so the fact that they're doing more research on it is good. The problem is that they have ignored the female biological rhythm, and it has a name. And the name is called the infradian rhythm. INFRADIAN. Infradian.
Get that out there, girl.
Yeah, I know it's so important. I mean, without vocabulary,
exactly,
we can't describe our reality, right? And think back to 20, 30 years ago, before Sex and the City was a TV show, there was a book that was published called The Vagina Monologues by Eve Ensler. Prior to that book, women did not know what the names of their genitalia were, like the parts.
Wow.
And so they would call them different things, like little silly pet names like hoo-ha and coochie and whatever. And that book by Eve Ensler was really revolutionary because it gave women vocabulary. And then it exploded a conversation into our cultural narrative that normalized proper vocabulary reference to our body parts, and then empowered the sexual expression of a generation. And then you see that reflected in, let's say, mainstream media like Sex and the City, right? So without vocabulary to describe who you are, you don't know who you are, and you walk around disempowered. And so that's why I want you to know how to spell your biological rhythm, because it is extraordinary. And I'm going to tell you more about it in a second. The circadian rhythm you experience in the course of 24 hours, everyone has that. The infradian rhythm activates at puberty and deactivates at menopause. And only women have that in their reproductive years. It runs concurrently with the circadian rhythm. And just like the circadian rhythm affects way more than waking up with the sun and going to bed when the moon comes out, right? It regulates when you have the peak blood pressure during the day versus lowest, when your bowels are more active versus when they're not. The circadian rhythm influences many systems of the body, as does the infradian. It influences your brain, your metabolism, your microbiome, your stress response system, your immune system, and your reproductive system. So you experience it in the course of the 28-day cycle, but it affects way more than your period, as I just outlined, right? From your brain down to your immune system, it governs those systems. And when I saw that, it became so clear why so many women were suffering. Because if we're taking research and saying, here, this is what's good for you, these are the new gold standards of, intermittent fasting and high intensity interval training, and this supplement and this medical thing, this is good for you. But, oh, by the way, we're completely not being transparent about the fact that the studies were only done on men. Then women apply these things hoping to get healthy, right? Doing a workout plan, waking up at 5 a.m. and doing a power morning, fasting for 18 hours a day, doing all these things, and their symptoms are getting worse and worse. Now we can explain very simply why. If you're using tools, programs, methodology that optimizes their circadian rhythm, it is going to disrupt your infradian rhythm if you are not using a system that is designed to optimize your infradian rhythm. So once I sort of unpacked all of this, then I wanted to create that system. And so the system that I created, which is outlined in the book in great detail, is called the cycle syncing method. Where you simply, it has 3 pillars: how you eat, what you do for workouts, and how you organize your time. And it factors in your infradian and circadian rhythms,
and you can get this program off of your site now, right?
Yes, so you can learn about it in the book, but you can also join us. We have the cyclesyncingmembership.com, where you will be given, for example, recipes, grocery lists, meal plans for the different phases of your infradian cycle, workout videos to go along with each phase, I built the world's first time management planner, like a daily planner that incorporates both the infradian and the circadian rhythm. It's in chapter 6 of In the Flow. If you're planning your day and you're not factoring in what's happening with your brain chemistry based on where you are in the infradian rhythm, you're not going to be as productive, period, pun intended, right? And men do this all the time. Ergo, corporate culture. Corporate culture optimizes the male hormonal biological circadian pattern. Getting to work early when men have that flood of testosterone and cortisol, they're ready to go. Women actually, because we have more complex brains, we actually need 20 minutes more sleep every night compared to men.
Makes sense.
So if you have a male partner, if you're in a heterosexual relationship and you're saying, oh, gee, if you even have the thought that you feel badly about yourself, that you don't wake up at the same time as your male partner, that is indicative of the fact that you've been fed a bunch of BS about who you are and you don't have the right education. Section 1 of the book will lay out everything about your extraordinary biology, about your brain and why you need more sleep. And you got to know this stuff to stand in your own skin, to stand in your power. You've been given such a gift. Like, you know how we all do these gratitude lists? The first thing on your list, or at least one of the things on your list every day, should be that you have a female set of biochemistry. It's amazing what you have been given. I'm thankful for a functioning, healthy body all the time because it's your vehicle to be in action in your life. So there's that. And these simple pillars are so extraordinary once you put them into practice, because it ends this silly conversation that we've been having for a long time, which says, okay, what should I eat? What's the perfect diet? What's the best workout? What should I do? What's the perfect daily routine? This question is too simplistic. What you need to stop doing is asking what, and you need to start asking when. When do I do things such that it takes advantage of my biology so that I can get things done with less friction in my system? So, for example, just to go back to that comparison to the male corporate culture, men know to schedule deep work in the morning because that's when they're most focused. And they also know to schedule meetings and social time after lunch because that's when their testosterone levels and cortisol levels start to dip and they cannot concentrate as much. And in fact, this is why biohacking has become so popular among men, because they fall off this physical and mental stamina cliff every day around 3 o'clock. When is happy hour? In some countries, it starts at 3. In the States, it's like 4 or 5, right? And that syncs up with the male hormonal pattern. So men are by default setting, organizing their eating, their exercising, and their project planning or time management around their biochemistry. I'm simply suggesting that that's a brilliant idea and that you should do the same thing. But you should do it for your infradian rhythm, not the circadian. So you have these 4 phases of your cycle. You have the follicular phase, the ovulatory phase, the luteal phase, and the bleeding week or menses. I always find it so frustrating that we call the menstrual cycle, that could be your period week. Like, you see what I'm saying? The words become interchangeable and that the lack of specificity just would not exist in the male side of things, right? They don't have one word that describes like 7 million things. It would be very specific. So I like to call it the bleeding week because that's specific. And then your cycle is the entire month. So in the first half of your cycle, I want to just take you through how the infradian rhythm causes these 4 pattern changes in your metabolism, in your stress response system, and in your brain chemistry, so that you can see why you must start adapting your life according to your infradian rhythm, because doing it otherwise actually disrupts everything about these systems of your body and gives you symptoms like PMS or worse, and then makes you like totally lose your creative edge and your productivity edge. So this is now like the ultimate hack for your health and life. So in the first half of your cycle, the follicular and ovulatory phases which is not where you start counting. You start counting on day 1 of your bleed, right? Because that's been the vernacular for medical professionals who need to track day 14 for ovulation purposes. Mm-hmm. But if anybody who has a cycle knows, is your bleed the beginning of the cycle? Does it feel like a new beginning? No, it feels like the culmination of the hormonal journey. Mm-hmm. So it's the completion, it's the end. So the follicular is the new start. So mm-hmm. follicular and ovulatory phases, first half of your cycle. Again, keep in mind, so many textbooks were written by men describing women's experiences, and they are not, they need updating. And this is one of the ways I think they need updating. So follicular and ovulatory first half, your metabolism slows down and your resting cortisol patterns are lower, which means that for you to be optimizing your metabolism, you need to eat fewer calories, and if you want to use fat stored fuel efficiently, mm-hmm. you want to do high intensity and cardio workouts. This combination of eating lighter and less foods and working out more intensely optimizes your metabolism in this phase and makes you firing on all mental cylinders, and it really is a powerful cocktail of mm-hmm. self-care and diet and lifestyle during this time. Then the research shows that in the second half, the luteal and the bleeding week, your metabolism speeds up. You in fact need 247 more calories per day. And the research shows that if you keep doing cardio and high intensity interval training in the second half of your cycle, you're going to turn on fat storage and turn on muscle wasting. And I saw this countless times in my practice over the past 20 years, because women, there's always these like fitness trends that come and go. One of them was training for a triathlon as a way to get in shape. And these women would come to me after they had done it and they had put on 20 pounds and needed answers because they were pretty upset. Yeah. How is it possible that somebody's running, biking, or swimming 5 miles a day and doing the diet that their coaches have been giving them, and they gain weight after the competition? Mm-hmm. Well, if you do the same workout every day and eat the same caloric value every day as a female with an active infradian rhythm, that's exactly what will happen. You will lose lean muscle and you'll gain fat. Wow. And this is groundbreaking information for you because, and let's just think about the psychological impact that this has had on all of us, right? Mm-hmm. So we've been told that women have just the slower metabolism compared to men, and we have to compensate more by restricting more, having more willpower, working out harder, no pain, no gain, no sacrifice, no bikini, the whole thing, right? Meanwhile, you've been fed such an enormous oversight about your biology, and you've been so diligently showing up at the gym, eating salads all day, and not having the scale budge at best, and at worst, gaining weight and gaining period problems, right? Mm-hmm. And thinking the whole time that something's wrong with you. It's you, you're the screw up, you're not good enough, you're lazy, all the nasty little inner voice dialogues that you have, not based on reality, based on this fantasy that we've created in our cultural narrative that says, oh, we don't know what's going on in your body, so you're just weaker, you just need less calories, and hopefully you can work hard enough and be one of the few beautiful women who attain the perfect physique. It's nonsense. It's toxic. It's hurting women's psychology. It's creating eating disorders unnecessarily. It's making women sick. And I just can't tolerate the injustice of it, because the science is so clear. First half of the cycle, eat lighter, eat fewer calories. There's a chart in chapter 4. It's called the food flow chart. It maps out each of these 4 phases. It gives you a list of foods to eat in each of these phases so that you don't have to worry about, oh no, which one's right. Yeah. In fact, it's not just about the calories. It's also, you do also have to work with the hormonal ratios as well. And so I outline that for you too, meaning in ovulation, if you're someone who breaks out on your chin during ovulation, that's because you have this peak estrogen surge during ovulation.
I get a hair.
You get a hair. Yeah. Okay. That you can.
I get forehead breakout. I don't know if that's.
Oh, interesting. So that's a combination. Forehead here, forehead on the side?
Both.
So
but mostly up here is the
so something you're eating is not working with your digestion, but also there's some liver stuff going on, which could indicate this excess estrogen. You'll be eating specific foods that are listed in the ovulatory week that help maximize the flushing out the metabolism of that estrogen, because you can't just eat random fewer calories. You have to take into consideration these 4 hormonal ratios that each of these phases represent. Ovulation is an estrogen dominant ratio. So you have to eat foods that are lighter, yes, but that are full of glutathione and vitamin C that are going to help your liver do the 3 phases of detoxification to get that estrogen out through the bowel. So it's a very intelligently designed eating plan to factor in not just your metabolic rate, but also your hormonal levels, so that you're always optimizing those hormonal ratios in each of the 4 phases. The luteal phase, for example, in the second half, you need more calories. And where women make the biggest mistake is they try to be good and retain the same restricted dietary patterns of the first half of the cycle, which felt easier to do, of course, because your metabolism works for your metabolism then. If you deprive yourself of those extra almost 300 calories a day, you don't need me to tell you what happens. You live this every month. You are good during the day. You have your smoothie in the morning, you have your salad at lunch, and then you, on your way home, start snacking on things and almost in a trance-like state where you're not even really sure what you're eating. It could be a croissant from a bakery. And then you get home, you're cooking, you're shoving cheese and crackers or chips into your mouth. And then after dinner, you're chocolate, ice cream and then like at the end of the night, you're like, oh my gosh,
I screwed up.
What did I eat? What's going on? You feel like you've been taken over. Yes, you have worked against your biochemistry, and it is desperately trying to it's trying to make a course correction, right? By not eating enough calories early enough in the day and spaced out through the day to stabilize your blood sugar, your body is going to send out powerful neurotransmitters called ghrelin to get you to eat more.
I call them gremlins because it's
and it's like that, right? Feed the hungry little gremlins. And then at the same time, if you're not eating enough complex carbohydrates, which we've been taught to fear eating carbohydrates, well, it turns out carbohydrates provide some pretty key building blocks for you to manufacture progesterone. And guess what you need in abundance during the luteal phase in order for you to have 0 PMS, which is not something you're ever supposed to have, and it's a sign of a hormonal imbalance. Progesterone.
Oh.
If you have more progesterone,
I was hoping it was carbs.
No,
Same thing.
But you want to eat more complex carbohydrates to get the building blocks to make more progesterone. So yes, you were there.
I must be hungry.
More progesterone versus estrogen in the luteal phase is the optimal hormonal ratio.
Okay.
And eat properly to achieve that. And so the food list breaks that down for you. It's so exciting to be able to hand this to you all, because we can just end this culture of toxic dieting and working out. Let me do a quickie on the workout. As I said, in the first half, you can do cardio and high intensity interval training. In the second half, you must not.
Okay. This is what I need to know.
You must not do.
I screw this up every time.
What is weights? Which one is that?
You can do non-cardio strength training in the second half of your cycle.
Okay.
So what does that look like? That looks like a lot of Pilates is non-cardio based strength training, holding plank position, squats up against the wall, long. So if you're doing like yoga where you're holding poses for long periods of time, this is all non-cardio strength training. Your body loves this during the luteal phase because your metabolism is very fast, meaning you're going to burn through your fuel very quickly, and because resting cortisol levels are higher. So if you do too much cardio in the second half, you're going to dip into your adrenal reserve. You're going to start that fat storage spiral. So non-cardio based strength training in the luteal phase is really the key. You can walk. You just can't go to your boxing class or your boot camp class or your cycling class. You don't want to do those things. Save it all for the first half of the month. And what you will find, how have I maintained a 60-pound weight loss for 20 years?
Yeah.
And how did I recover my body postpartum, and I gained 40, 50 pounds during my pregnancy, which is reasonable for me because I'm estrogen sensitive, right? How did I do that? I did zero deprivation. I worked with the science of my body, and I still do. And when you do that, everything becomes effortless, right?
Amazing.
Coaches train male athletes this way, right? They know when the right time to train men so that they build most muscle,
right,
and reduce injury. We don't get that education, so we just do it whenever, and we think we have to do it as hard as we can every day.
Whenever the class is scheduled. Yeah.
That's right. Not on your time, on somebody else's time. And it's hurting you. It's thwarting your desired results, sometimes preventing them from taking place in the first place. And it's just so wrong. But the great news is that we have a wonderful leader in the space, the U.S. women's soccer team. They have looked at the science, and they've decided, it is illogical for us to train our female soccer athletes on a circadian rhythm. We're going to train them on an infradian one.
Fantastic.
And it's a wonderful new milestone, I think, that I hope has an extraordinary trickle-down effect, not just to other female sports teams, but also the way that girls in school have physical education, right?
Yes.
Because
PE, I remember running, and just sometimes it was like, I can't do this.
Listen, let me be clear, and I write about this in the book. You can do anything that you want at any time. So can a man, right? The issue is that we should do it when it's optimal, right? On our own timing, right? So if, for example, a girl is going to school and it's the first day of her bleed and she is cramping and she is feeling a little bit lower energy, she should feel fine, right? But it's not optimal for her to run 10 laps around the gym. She can do it without question, but it's not optimal for her. So why would we force her to do that, right? When she could just instead walk it. So what I'm saying is we should have an inclusive culture, not just in schools, not just in sports, also in the workplace, which we'll talk about because we're going to talk about brain chemistry next. That allows for these differences to coexist, right? Because, if it makes sense for boys to train at gym earlier in the day and to run laps whenever is optimal for them, why can we not also have an inclusive conversation that says, okay, well, let's let the girls do it when it's optimal for them. Right. And if they're all tracking their cycle and that's information that they can verify with their gym teacher, it's not going to be turned into an excuse, which I think everybody worries about, like, oh, we don't want to use our period as an excuse to opt out of things. I'm not suggesting that at all. What I'm suggesting is we use that information as a powerful tool to be healthier, to be happier, to not drain our energy as much, starting in school when you start getting your period, all the way throughout the rest of your life. And if we can normalize that for girls in middle school, they will become very different leaders in the culture as a whole. The brain chemistry piece is pretty powerful too. And I know we're sort of getting close on our time here, but what I'll say is that there are times of the month, because of what is happening hormonally, that certain regions of your brain are hyperstimulated. And understanding when these regions are being stimulated is very powerful, because then what it allows you to do is organize projects. For example, during the ovulation phase, because of that estrogen surge, you get super stimulated verbal and social centers of your brain. Now, you intuitively know, as I'm talking to you, that yes, you do feel different in these ways, but no one's ever put a picture frame around it, and you've been taught to distrust your intuition, so you've brushed it aside and powered through. Stop doing that. In fact, you have a bigger region of the brain that houses the intuition, and so your intuition is a really powerful tool. What I would say is that when you have these hyperstimulated times of verbal and social skills, why not plan networking events, or say yes to going to them? Or why not plan a presentation at your office to present your new ideas? Or why not give a talk, depending on what you're doing for a living? Pick that time, because it happens every month in the ovulation phase. You can plan 6 months out from now if your cycle is healthy and regular. And there's a whole biohacking section in the book if it is not. And please go to flowliving.com if you're struggling with anything that's disrupting your cycle, from a diagnosed menstrual disorder like PCOS, amenorrhea, dysmenorrhea, fibroids, endometriosis. You got to clean that up first, which the FLO protocol will help you do. And then you can start taking advantage of the cycle syncing method. Your cycle has to be functioning at least in some basic way. In the luteal phase, your brain has the first moment where it gets access to progesterone. This has a very calming effect and a focusing effect. This is the longest phase of the cycle, 10 to 12 days. This is where, because you are calm and focused, you can get so much done. In fact, this is when I try to finish any project that I have on my project map. I do it at this time, and it's predictable month over month over month. I know when I'm working on certain categories of projects. There's also a chart for this in chapters 6 and 7 that talk about the time management piece and how to apply this in a corporate setting. And I go into corporations all the time. So if you are in one and you'd like me to come and teach your male and female teams how to have an inclusive workplace to make sure that we're bringing in both realities of what's optimal work, what does optimal work schedule look like for men and what does optimal work schedule look like for women. We have to have a corporate culture that's inclusive for women. Right now, it's highly gender skewed to the male biological rhythm, and it's making women sick and symptomatic at work and opting out of working in corporate cultures because they cannot fit into that circadian lifestyle. They need
just less productive.
Less productive, and it becomes diminishing returns. And women, as logical and sensible as they are, say, this is not a good environment for me. I have to find something else.
I'm in the luteal phase now, but I'm not having the same effects because I'm doing a mimicking fast. So
you're doing a what fast?
Like a mimicking fast. Is that what it's called, Mercedes? I can't even remember now.
Mimicking fast.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not familiar with that at all, but here's another thing I talk about. Like, you should not start a new diet plan or do a detox in the second half of your cycle, because
already stressed more.
You're going to disrupt your blood sugar, which is why you can't concentrate, Jade, right now. And you're going to jack up cortisol production, which is going to make you feel anxious and insomniacal and give you more PMS. So if you're going to do any detoxing or fasting, you do that in the follicular and ovulatory phases, never after ovulation. I would stop immediately if I were you and pick it back up after your bleed is completed, because you're going to disrupt ovulation for your next month, and you will likely have very bad PMS the next month.
Oh no. Well, you talked about intermittent fasting and calories. Does the time a woman is supposed to start eating and stop eating, does that change throughout her phase, or it's the same?
No. So the research that I outline and dug up for you all is that intermittent fasting, as it's being publicly shared, like the 18-hour fast,
is a male-based research.
That only is only safe and gives the research documented benefits for men and postmenopausal women.
Okay.
If you're in your reproductive years, you cannot do that without disrupting your cycle, your ovarian size, your thyroid health, your brain health, your metabolic health. All of those things will become disrupted. What you can do is a 12-hour fast every day.
Okay, that's what I do.
During your reproductive years, from dinner time to breakfast. 12 hours is great.
And then focus on liver support, focus on using the tips of how to eat from your 4-phase cycles.
Yeah, you want to start using the cycle syncing method to basically eat what you're supposed to eat when it is the right time for your biochemistry.
So I have something we brought up yesterday. We actually spoke to a fasting expert yesterday who is supposed to be a fasting expert for women specifically, which she does say not to do it in the second half of your month, your cycle.
Wonderful.
However, so for me, I'm not actually going to ask about fasting, but I did bring this up in that conversation of when I'm in my second half of my monthly cycle, luteal, if I run a lot, it seems I get constipated, or I'll get these symptoms that are almost like my body is shutting down digestion and kind of going into more of a fight or flight phase, which is something I've struggled with for most of my life. But so that I'm just trying to put these keys you're giving me here in this talk together, and that's making sense.
That's because you're disrupting your cortisol, your adrenal health by doing an intense workout and fasting. You're disrupting insulin levels and blood sugar levels. And then you're also taxing your adrenals and you're making more cortisol, which is going to make you feel bad.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
you definitely need to really, there's no other way to take care of yourself as a woman in your reproductive years. If you have to look at this infradian rhythm, you have to see the 4 pattern changes in the month, and you have to change what you're eating when, which workouts you're doing and when you're taking advantage of these amazing brain chemistry gifts that you're being given throughout the month, so that you can do more with less stress. Because the stress burden on women, of course, because of our gender biased society, is a real problem. And just living in an environment that does not include your biological clock is a huge stressor, right? You have to try to fit your life into a circadian clock. That creates stress. Then add on not eating the right things at the right time, doing the same workout every month, all month long. You're stressing out your system more. Then just trying to work however long you think you're supposed to work on whatever you think you're supposed to work on without factoring in your brain chemistry shifts, more stress. So now you've got compounded stress, multifactorial stress inputs. You are going to buckle under that. And that's going to show up as insomnia, mood destabilization, brain fog at first, then physical symptoms like breakouts, headaches, bloating, PMS symptoms, and then it's going to get progressively worse with a disrupted cycle, or then developing menstrual disruptions of some sort. It then can affect your fertility, decrease your fertility, shut off your sex drive. Before you know it, you are feeling terrible. And then you think, gee, I have to use something for my skin, something for my mood, something for my fertility, something for no.
It's like zoom out and look at the bigger
picture. Zoom out and look
at
the root. The deepest root factor here is your infradian rhythm. If you're not working with it, you're disrupting it, and everything will start to become dysfunctional as a result. This is what female biohacking looks like, by the way. It does not look like extreme stuff. Right now, is it fun to go do cryotherapy and saunas and do they have benefits for everybody? Sure.
I love that you say that. Yeah.
Biggest bang for your buck. The biggest bang for your buck that's going to get you healthy now, keep you healthy for the long term, and set you up to have a healthy postmenopausal life is the cycle syncing method.
Yeah. And it sounds like so much of that leads us back to literally being in our femininity, in our feminine energy, that is not about extreme, and it's not about being, overly stressing the body. It's about being gentle, receiving, accepting, self-love, these type of things.
I think that's a trigger for a lot of women, because think about it. When you're in an environment that doesn't include your reality, you feel like you have to put your guard up. You got to fight. And so this idea that you would now all of a sudden still be in the same environment
but soften,
that's a deeply triggering. That's not
scary.
Something that's going to make you feel safe. And here's also the other reality, is that it's not needed. Not the way that we have been discussing it. What's needed is for us to recognize that we have both masculine and feminine energy. In fact, you can map that in your cycle. You
embody one or the other, depending on where you're at.
Your follicular and ovulatory phase is a more masculine energized phase. The luteal, actually it depends. Sometimes I feel like my ovulatory and luteal is a more masculine forward phase. I'm going forward, I'm getting things done. My menstrual and follicular is more feminine, meaning I'm evaluating things. I'm looking at my life in my menstrual phase, and in my follicular phase, I'm planning, I'm ideating, I'm imagining, visioning. That's creative feminine energy. Both of these masculine and feminine energies feel strong to me, equally powerful. And I don't experience them as the way that we've just sort of been talking about it in, let's say, the spirituality movement of like your feminine energy. I think that isn't, if that's not something that you're comfortable with, I welcome you to start looking at how the biochemistry of your cycle actually gives you access to both of these energetics. They're both equally powerful. And if you do have some residual judgment about your feminine energy, by practicing the cycle syncing method, that will quickly evaporate like nothing else. You can't think your way out of your already always way of being, but you can live your way out of it. And by practicing a new lifestyle, you're going to get to know yourself in a new way. what you think will be changing, and then how your life turns out will change because what you're thinking is different. So it's really powerful to think about a world in which women feel so differently about themselves from the beginning, like that they are these powerful creatures, that they get to have access to this second biological clock starting at puberty, and it's a precious gift that doesn't last forever. It's only from puberty to menopause, that they want to take advantage of it, that we have this more inclusive conversation in the media, full transparency. When a new study is published, it says, oh, this was only done on men. So women we don't know yet what this might do to you. Be careful. If you're going to try it, be very careful. Look at your period and how it's being impacted. To think about a future in which corporate culture is more inclusive of these biological rhythms, to think about puberty in schools as a very different experience for boys and girls, one that promotes learning and appreciating about each other's differences, so that sets you up for healthier relationships. The possibilities are enormous when we actually start using real facts and having that be our foundation, as opposed to this mythological, toxic rhetoric that has been the basis of our society for far too long. It must change.
I definitely preach on this show maybe too much, maybe in every of our like 70 plus episodes that we've aired so far. Hormones over anything, like think about how this is affecting your hormones as you try it, and look out for all the signs there. And we're winding down, of course, with you here, and it's been incredible to speak with you. We got a lot of questions about people struggling with being able to get pregnant. And that seems to be, even in my friend group, just a ongoing concern. And I think you spoke to a lot of course, what could help balance people out and get them to a place where,
if you simply start using the cycle syncing method, you're going to take away several of the factors that are disrupting your hormones right out of the gate.
Yeah.
So what you're likely doing right now is causing stress on your reproductive system, and you're not eating enough of the right foods that are going to boost your micronutrient levels. I would definitely have you guys check out the special Balance by FLO Living supplement formulations that I put together to help the endocrine system, especially if you're trying to conceive, or if you're just recently off the birth control of some sort. You need to replenish those lost micronutrients in order for you to be ripe enough, so to speak, biochemically, to have the abundance to produce a healthy egg and to conceive and hold that pregnancy. It all comes down to like hormone levels. And those are, of course, things that you manufacture from the foods that you're eating and the supplements that you're taking, and combined with living a self-care practice that doesn't drain your energy, deplete your blood sugar balance, and put stress on your adrenals. So that's, again, why the cycle syncing method is just such an essential practice for us as women in our reproductive years. If you have a functioning cycle, you must do this. It's not a nice idea. It's a need to do.
Yes. We so often go to the doctor and they're men giving us the advice too on all of this. So that's just something to keep in mind. But okay, so before we close out here with you, Alisa, there's a few short questions we like to ask everyone who comes on the show. Sure. If you could hug your younger self right now, what would you say?
I would say, you are so beautiful.
If you could have the whole world read one book, which would it be?
Oh my gosh, that is probably the hardest question I've ever been asked. Jeez, you should see my bookshelf. Wow. Can I give a few? I can't answer.
Sure.
I just cannot. It's an impossible.
Get them all.
I can't do it. I would have you read Women Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. I would have you read Circe by Madeline Miller. It is the first fictional book based on real Greek mythology that documents the heroine's journey and how that is. It just I was blown away. I hope someday to sit down with that author. She did a huge service to womankind. I would have you read In the Flow because of what's in there to give you the keys to who you are. What else would I have you read? I would have you read The Body Keeps the Score.
Oh, that's such a beautiful book.
Yeah.
So well done. One book that also opened my mind to the way women work was Dr. Luann Brisendine's The Female Brain.
Oh, I love that book.
Yeah, was really incredible. I've recommended that here on the show a bunch.
I think I'm going to have to put a library together of recommended reading to help women quickly get an education and orientation to
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
The FLO Living Institute. We need that information.
I'll get to work on it. Add it to my list.
If you could whisper one phrase to everyone on the planet, what would it be?
You guys asked some good questions. If I could whisper one phrase. Learn about who you are and get to know other people authentically.
Okay, I like that.
I love that. Before we let you go, where can people find you online?
You can find me on flowliving.com. If you've got any hormonal issues that we can be of service to you around, please reach out to us. You can find the app at myflowtracker.com. You can join the cycle syncing revolution at cyclesyncingmethod.com. And you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Flow Living. And my personal is alisa.vitti, at alisa.vitti.
Yes, highly recommend all of it, folks. So, Alisa, I think a big part of what you're doing for our imbalanced, often hyper-masculine culture at large is helping women like Jade and I be okay and maybe even empowered being female, which is often looked at, you know, it's kind of like a sin in our culture. And I've personally experienced the effects of your wisdom and your work by applying it to my life, especially in becoming a more compassionate listener to my body and responding to my body's needs. And I also want to thank you for including men in this journey, as I mentioned a bunch in the show, which I think is something that's often overlooked, but is so important to include our partners in life and give them the tools to be able to wake up from the collective nap we as a culture have been in. So thank you for all of that and for teaching me how to live smarter in a woman's body, in my body. Thank you for being a light.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. We're going to send you, of course, when our launch date is for this and any promos we make for it, which I'm sure will be plentiful.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies.
Have a good rest of the day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Oh, that was a lot. She was the perfect guest because we didn't even have to ask questions. She just was like, next we're going to brain health. I was
great.
like, okay,
yes,
we didn't have a question for that, but go on.
We need to know this stuff. And
I trusted her, which was nice because like we know her work. It's not like someone that like, you know, we're not familiar with. So we're like, go
whatever
on.
you're going to give us,
whatever you're going to give us, we'll take it. Yeah,
exactly. I just, and we had so many more questions, of course, for her that we couldn't get to, but many. Hopefully there'll be another show in the future, or hopefully honestly, my biggest hopes is that this area of expertise will widen amongst people in the medical field and the nutritional field. You know, this type of study will be something more people get interested in. I know I'm completely fascinated by it, and I'll keep interjecting my invitations to the public world to get deeper in this work. But I hope we have other guests that really embody this to a point where we want to have them on and share it with the world. And we'll cover the rest of the questions we had today for her that we didn't get to.
Yeah.
So I want to give a shout out before we move on to magic tricks to the ladies who are listening and are probably going to do a deep dive into the hard work that this episode is asking them to do. Maybe a shout out to you and I, Jade, because I know we're about to do some work on it ourselves.
Her book's about to become my Bible.
Right. And I also want to commend the men listening for now being the man who knows enough to be dangerous with the ladies. This is part of what we call being a woke man. So thank you guys for helping us make that change and bringing a more balanced, generous world together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like a very dedicated lifelong journey.
It is.
It's like once you know the information. Yeah, but I mean, I guess like intermittent fasting was like that for me too, and celery juice, and now it's been
just a lifestyle change.
It's 4 years, and it's like I don't even think about it; I just do it. So, I'm sure once you get in the mode of it, you're not having to like reference the book. It's just Oh
yeah, it's just it's easy. A lifestyle change, so you have to commit to it. But then you have to do that thing we talked about before, which is letting the person who you were yesterday die off, grieve it and move forward, because who wants to stay the same every day for the rest of your life? Like what she was talking about regarding a story about a man who said, after our baby, my woman was never the same, and I wish she would go back to that way. It's like, what person really in their right mind, when they're being honest with themselves, would want to be with someone who never evolves and never changes? So I think if we're supportive of each other in that way, and we're supportive of ourselves to continue to evolve, we can allow who we were yesterday, who might have known less, to evolve into the person we are today, which has better knowledge and is better able to take care of ourselves and others. So for it. Let's keep moving. What's your magic?
What's your magic?
Oh,
I asked you first.
Okay. I was going to say, Jinx, you got to buy me a Coke or something. I don't drink caffeine. We didn't even get to caffeine with her. By the way, Alisa Vitti is 100% against women drinking caffeine during their childbearing years. She has a whole talk on it on YouTube if you want to look it up, and it's super important. Women, if you're listening, take that into consideration. I think that that's a huge and important factor we didn't get to cover here, but caffeine is just like, it's a man's drink, if anybody. Okay. Kick it out of your life. Okay. My magic trick today comes from a Instagram account called Think For Yourself. And they posted something that said, did you know that cortisol is released in tears? Cortisol is a hormone that is created in the body as a response to stress. That's something we probably all know. But you probably didn't know that when we cry, in addition to other benefits, we are physically cleansing our body of stress. So allowing ourselves to cry is an act of self-care. And I just found that really beautiful.
Yeah, that ties into mine, which I was going to do, download her app, but I feel like we talked about that enough on the talk with her. So something we didn't get to was that she rephrased, it might be the right word here, for PMS. She changed it to prioritizing myself.
Yeah, she changed the acronym for PMS to prioritizing
myself. So that would be my magic trick for you, is that when you're on your period, to just do some extra self-care, to take it easy, to not overwork yourself, to prioritize yourself. And then if you're a man listening, to just encourage your woman to do that, and maybe make it easier for her to do so.
Yeah. And I, just to add to that, I would say, you said on your period, but PMS, premenstrual syndrome. So before your period, which is when we have the really kind of, well, at least for me, is that week before my period starts, it's like a more, I don't know, volatile side of me comes out. And that's the time when I need to be getting the massages and relaxing a little bit more and kind of amping up for my bleed, essentially, so that I'm in a phase of calmness.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Allowing yourself to cry or whatever needs to happen so that cortisol comes out,
Yeah.
All the things.
All right, Magic Mothers, thank you so much for tuning in and taking this journey with us. If this episode held some magic for you, please share it with your friends and family. This would mean so much to us. And don't forget to join us on our Instagram page at The Magic Hour and let us know what your favorite episodes have been so far. We appreciate all of your feedback and really want to know what's lighting you up.
Yes, and we release a new episode every Monday, so you can catch us again next week or go listen to some of our past episodes in our podcast library now. We'll meet you there. Until then,
be a light.